Have timed my intro well. Again, the YouTube lag is doing me dirty. It's been doing me dirty for, I feel like it's been doing me dirty for the past five live streams. But either way, when I watch this back, we'll wait and see. But anyhow, good evening. It's a late one today, but still here, still showing up. Hope you boys are doing well. And yeah, happy Friday. The weekend is upon us, eh? Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, I'm in the UK, so weather's getting better, so it's looking like tomorrow's going to be a good day. So I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, hopefully you guys are also having a good weekend or have a good weekend coming up. Some nice plans, but either way, today was pretty chill, to be honest. I mean, yeah, I had a call with one of my clients and then yeah, just been prepping for the immersion that's upcoming. So yeah, pretty stoked about that. Very excited about that. Can't wait to get the ground or can't wait to hit the ground running. Can't wait to get stuck in. Should be fun. But yeah, you see the title, right? So be cynical about your own cynicism. So this one is inspired by one of my favorite Canadians, Mr. Jordan Peterson. And I just came across one of his videos, one of his podcast appearances, and I was rewatching the beginning, and there was a great segment where him and Chris were talking about cynicism and how it's very easy to become cynical when you've been put through some sort of suffering, especially when you feel as if that suffering is unjust, right? So you feel as if the world is out to get you, or man is out to get you, or you got made fun of by this person, or this person did you dirty, or that person insulted you. And it's very easy to take that very personally, especially if you feel like it's unwarranted. And that can lead people to cynicism, right? That leads a lot of people to cynicism, right? And of course, it got me thinking, and especially it got me thinking about it in the context of code approach and in the context of dating. And the reason why is because there's so many different takes floating on the internet. You've got the black pill space, the red pill space, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions. Some opinions are just anecdotal, based on people's personal experiences. Other people will cite evidence or research or evolutionary psychology or evolutionary biology, right? And they've got all these different evo psych takes on what men like, what women like, height, you know, money, status, strength, competency, personality, looks, certain features are better than other features, and this is scientifically backed, and all this sort of stuff, right? You've got a bit of science based fact, and you've also got some, let's say, more anecdotal, subjective opinions. And all of this coalesces, mixes up, and we get it online, right? It's fed to us and packaged to us in a certain way. And a lot of the time, because naturally the internet tends to lean more on the negative side, because that gets more clicks and that gets more attention, and people are more emotionally invested, and it's a lot more triggering when you see something that's negative. So naturally, a lot of the opinions or facts or points that are made about dating online, they're typically negative, right? Especially when it comes to attraction. And a lot of people who are despondent, a lot of people watching these videos who maybe like me one day felt as if they were dealt a bad hand, or they've had it rougher than somebody else, or they're not as genetically gifted, or any of these sort of reasons that we might use to justify why we don't succeed. We go online and we see these takes, and then we use it as evidence that, you see, I told you, you see, girls don't like this kind of guy. Maybe some of you have watched, sometimes I get it where somebody will watch like an infield of me, or like a video of me approaching, and maybe I get rejected. Or to be fair, it's not me. It doesn't always have to be me. It can be somebody else, right? Somebody else can put a rejection reel on YouTube, and somebody in the comments goes, you see, cold approach doesn't work just based off what they've seen, right? Obviously, they don't get the full picture, but that's what we tend to do, right? We tend to be swayed by what we see online, especially if it's confirming our own negative or self-limiting beliefs, especially around, our, let's say, our capability to be attractive, or like our attractiveness or our ability to get girls, right? We'll grab onto the negative stuff that confirms that. And to a degree, it's because it makes us feel better. And it's, in a way, it's a bit of cope, right? But it's not a bad cope, because a lot of the time it's based on what we've seen. And so if I go online and I see some red pill commentator or some black pill commentator saying, yeah, if you're not this tall, or if you don't have this much money, or if you don't have this much muscle, or if you don't have this particular facial structure, then you're cooked, right? And that video has 100,000 views, and you get guys in the comments saying, yeah, this has been my experience, I knew I was right. Yeah, like, it's easy to confirm your own bias, right? And so if we're just leaving it there, then I guess one could say, yeah, there's some validity there, right? Like, this guy must be right, these guys must be true, everything they're saying must be true, and therefore I must be eternally cooked. Okay, that's one position. But then here's where Jordan Peterson, as usual, just gave a great one liner. And he said, it was funny because he said that cynicism is necessary at a certain stage. So it's important to feel cynical. And it was great that he said that, because at one point I also felt cynical, right? When I was down in the dumps, on the dating apps, not getting any results, swiping, wake up the next morning, no matches, swipe, next morning, one match, and then I realize it's a bot. Like, at that point, I was cynical. I was cynical about a lot, especially dating, and especially my position in the, let's say, hierarchy. I felt unseen, I felt invisible, I felt like I wasn't gonna get anything. So yeah, I became cynical. And so I'm not saying that being cynical is completely wrong. And because, like Jordan said, or Mr. Peterson said, he made the point that cynicism is actually the first step towards wisdom, right? Because when you're cynical, you're in sort of a bad position. You're in a pretty bad state. And for those of us who refuse to give up, that cynicism, in some sense, it's like activation energy. And eventually, if we're lucky, we come across an alternative way of looking at the world, a new perspective, which in this case for me was cold approach, right? So I was cynical after my poor, terrible dating app experiences. And then cold approach lifted me out of that cynicism by providing wisdom, right? I saw the wisdom in being able to talk in person, because it made a lot of sense. I knew that if I can develop the courage and the skills to hold my own, be comfortable in my own skin, and have conversations in public, then that would open up an entire pool of people, an you know, entire ocean of women who would be open to talking to me or dating me, and then eventually going out with me, right? So that was the wisdom, right? At that point of cynicism, I eventually looked for truth, and I found wisdom through cold approach. But unfortunately, a lot of us stay in that cynicism. Thankfully, I haven't. Thankfully, my clients haven't. But a lot of people do, right? And it's interesting because this is where the quote came in, right? And this is the title: Be cynical about your own cynicism. So, a lot of guys who are so fervently confident that the black pill or the red pill is 100% gospel, it is true, and they refuse to be convinced otherwise. Those guys are the cynics, right? And they're so hell bent, they're so, they believe in their ideology so much that they refuse to see a different perspective. And they are not cynical about their own cynicism. And the reason why is, well, when you realize that they're not cynical about their own cynicism, it begs the question, what makes you think that you know everything, right? That's the point that Jordan made, right? Peterson was saying, why aren't you cynical about your own cynicism? What makes you so sure? Are you God? Are you the knower of all things? Are you the benevolent God who knows the laws and everything of the universe? How do you know that this is the end all be all? People are you're preaching it as if it's a fact, but that's just your experience, or that's just one idea, or that's just one fact. But in the grand scheme of life, in the grand scheme of all possibilities, and in the grand scheme of the fact that life is completely random and that not everything is logical, then maybe what you're saying isn't as true as you think it is. Maybe it isn't as foolproof as you think it is. Maybe there's some holes in what you're saying, right? Maybe what you're saying to an extent is true. Maybe it's a half truth, and maybe there are cases where what you're saying isn't true. So let's just use an example, right? Let's get into real examples. So somebody can say, you know, on average, most girls like a guy with lots of muscle, and therefore, if you don't have muscle, then you're finished. Okay, so that somebody who says that might use some sort of statistical research on evolutionary psychology. Then they're going to use their own personal experience because they went to the gym, gained muscle, and then became big, and then got the girls, right? And so we look at that and go, oh, that guy must be right. And every person who doesn't fit that archetype becomes a cynic, and they're the guys in the comments saying, you see, you need to have this, you need to have the muscle, you need to have the money, you need to be this big in order to get that girl. But then I come along and I break that stereotype. I break that idea, that apparent fact, right? Apparently that was supposed to be a rule of the universe, but then I come along and I break it. And it's not just me. You've all been there. How many times have you gone outside and seen somebody, some guy who doesn't seem to have all these attributes of looks, money, status, yet he's with a hot girl, or he's just got a girlfriend, a pretty attractive one, and he seems pretty confident, right? How many times do we see that guy? And you look at him and you go, you know, what does that guy have that I don't have? Right? Because then the cynic, right? The cynics among us, those of us who are so confident that we're cooked, how come we're not cynical when we see that guy? Because he disproves the rule. He disproves the idea that you have to have the looks, the money, and the status. So how come he doesn't fit into that stereotype, right? How come he doesn't fit into that rigid set of beliefs? He seems to be okay, and he's walking around and he's confident. In fact, he's more confident than the guys who are preaching this looks, money, status stuff. So what does he have that you don't have? What do I have that you don't have, right? Be cynical about your own cynicism. Because it's so easy to look at one example that confirms your beliefs. And the truth is, if I'm being really honest, guys, it's just cope. It gives you an excuse not to go out. It gives you an excuse not to go out and put yourself on the line and face the rejection, face the public humiliation, face the awkwardness, face the embarrassment. It's very convenient. It's very convenient, right? Because if you decide to go against your cynicism and pursue wisdom and pursue truth through experience, then you're gonna have a day of reckoning. You're gonna have to get your ego punched and bruised and put yourself out there. And yes, there'll be moments where you slightly fall back into that cynicism because you get rejected and your brain wants to think it's because of the way you look, or because of your height, or because of your skin color, or because of your smile, or because of your hair, or because of your style. And yes, you'll feel that way, and the cynicism will be banging onto your door, begging you to come back into your room of comfort, your room of cynical comfort. But it's bullshit. It's bullshit. Don't fall into that trap, you know? Don't fall into that trap. That's why algorithms and like YouTube algorithms are so deadly and dangerous. Same goes for any other social media app, because it will just feed you the narrative that confirms your negative belief. But it will completely hide every other example or anecdote or even fact that is contrary to what you believe, right? So be careful what you consume, obviously, but more importantly, just question your self-limiting beliefs and ask yourselves, well, is it really true that, because I don't have X, Y, or Z, then I'm cooked? Looks, money, status, or whatever it is. Really? Is that really true? Like, start questioning this stuff, right? Like, just take a second to question it because you realize, maybe not. And the best evidence is the fact that if you guys spend enough time outside, you'll see people who disprove the rule, right? And I'm only here for the guys who want to be rebels, yeah, rebels, rule breakers in the good sense, right? Guys who don't want to settle for the average, whatever the fuck that is. Guys who don't want to settle for mediocrity. Guys who give a big fuck you to mediocrity. That's who I'm here for. I'm here for guys who don't, you know, look at a piece of research or look at a one person's perspective or some sort of red pill perspective or black pill perspective, and they don't. I'm here for the guys who look at that and go, yeah, that's just not part of my reality. I don't buy that. I don't care. I'm somebody who wants to go out there and find out for myself, and I will go and find out, and I don't care if it takes me 100 reps of approaches to find out. Fuck around and find out. That's how you battle cynicism. You just go into the field, right? There's no theory, there's no doing it in the comfort of your room and conditioning yourself with all this content. No, you go out into the field and you find out for yourself, like a real man, like a real, warrior. That's how you do it. So that's it, boys. I'm going to leave it there. I want to get an early night in preparation for tomorrow. Otherwise, yeah, I'll leave you on that note. Be cynical about your own cynicism, and if you do that, you'll be on your way to wisdom. Good night.